Yo, what's going on guys, it is Fox98 here and welcome back to a brand new video and another episode of the F1 debate for you guys today here on the channel. It's been a little bit of a while since we had an F1 debate video and we are back, and I'm going to try and do my absolute hardest to try and make them as much as possible, but as I'll explain later on, things will be getting in the way of that. But if you end up enjoying today's video though, feel free to drop it a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here as well, and let's get straight into this debate video, where I've decided to open up a conversation with my own personal opinions and then open it up to you about George Russell and the new era at Mercedes-Benz. Obviously, as you can tell from my attire, I am already fully embraced in the Mercedes-Adidas partnership. Basically, let's put it out here. Mercedes, obviously my favourite team. Adidas, my favourite clothing brand. It was inevitable that I was going to waste money on, not waste money, but spend money on all this stuff. And like I said, you know, when you're happy in your life and you don't have a missus and it's Valentine's Day, spend it on yourself, right? So that's what I've gone ahead and done. So anyway, what I wanted to kind of discuss is obviously the new era that Mercedes-Benz is now going into now that Mr. Mercedes of Formula 1, Lewis Hamilton, is no longer a part of the team and has joined Ferrari. We've obviously done some discussions about Hamilton at Ferrari before, but now it's the opportunity that George Russell has been waiting for. George Russell obviously is now entering, I believe it's his 7th season in Formula 1, which is still quite a mad stat to say. But obviously he had 3 seasons at Williams, and then he's now coming into his 4th season with Mercedes, I think, if I'm correct. Yeah, so it would be his 7th season. God, I'm good at maths, ladies and gentlemen. Wow! But yeah, this is now the era where George Russell finally gets to lead a top team in Formula 1. Now, is George Russell ready for this challenge? Can he do the challenge? And is that something that obviously will help him, or is it going to hurt him in the long-term future? Well, I'm here to basically give my thoughts as a Mercedes fan, what I personally think about George Russell, and obviously how that's going to line up then with Kimi Antonelli, who's going to be in that number 2 driver's seat. So let's get straight down to business. Obviously, George Russell's not exactly in a position where he's never led a team in Formula 1 before. He's already done this before with Williams. The problem is, Williams and Mercedes are 2 completely different outfits. And that's no disrespect to the Williams Formula 1 team, because that team is obviously embroiled in history and it is such a successful team that it's not a case of, at the moment, unfortunately, they're not where Mercedes are, you know? So with him leading that Williams team, especially in you'd say 2020 and 2021 are probably the 2 years when George Russell led that team. Because 2019 was obviously the absolute catalyst of absolutely nothing. I swear I can hear an ice cream truck outside. Yeah, I can. Sorry about that. I got distracted by ice cream. So George Russell joining in 2019 as a rookie, there's nothing really on George's shoulders at that point. You know, it's in the Rocket Williams team. It was easily the worst that Williams, it was literally the lowest of lows for Williams was that 2019 season. So you can't really take much from that. But Russell's definitely been the spearhead of Williams's road to revival in Formula 1. Obviously, in 2020, things started to pick up a little bit for the team. Not massively, but, you know, was gradually starting to show some slightly better performances in there. And obviously, in 2021, the Williams revival continued to progress. And obviously, that's when Russell finally started scoring some more points. He even got a podium in a race that lasted, well, they didn't actually race at all. It was just the Belgian Grand Prix, obviously. I'm trying to make a joke about it because it was just a complete farce, but you get what I'm saying. So Russell was definitely, has the knowledge and the sort of weight on his shoulders to lead a team. So he's not going into this Mercedes experience alone, but obviously there's a hell of a big weight on George Russell's shoulders. And it's not because of George Russell, and it's not because of his experience and his talents. The biggest problem for George Russell is that what he's trying to do now, and it's not going to be the exact, let's not get twisted here. It's very, very uncommon for a Formula 1 team to dominate for such a long period of time. And Mercedes-Benz, whether you love them, like me, or whether you hate them, you have to give the team credit, because to go on a streak of winning the Constructors' Championship 8 years in a row is pretty much unprecedented. And with multiple regulation change, some of them pretty substantial, like from the 2016 to the 2017 regulation change, even to the 2018 to the 2019 regulation change, it just shows that this team that George Russell now needs to build back up is a team that, in terms of the previous couple of years that it's had prior to the ground effect era, has been the most dominant in Formula 1 for quite some time. Partner that with one of the most dominant Formula 1 drivers in the previous time of Lewis Hamilton. Now, it's very similar. I picture George Russell's sort of takeover of Mercedes. It gives me sort of like new manager bounces, you know, like Jurgen Klopp for Liverpool. You know, he did so much for that football club. He won every single trophy, the Premier League, the FA Cup, the Carabao Cup, the Champions League, the UEFA Super Cup. He won it all. And then he goes and leaves. And then all of a sudden, you now need to replace that. And obviously, with Arne Slot coming in, he's doing that job right now with Liverpool, as I'm recording this, top of the Premier League by like 4 points, because I've just watched Arsenal beat Leicester. And it's something like that. It's like Manchester United. You know, Sir Alex Ferguson made them one of the biggest clubs in the world. Then as soon as you took Sir Alex Ferguson away and tucked him to the side because he retired, Manchester United have never been the same. And this is the fear that you have to bring into Mercedes. Can George Russell rebuild basically what Hamilton built? You know, because like with any driver, like with any combination, you're coming into a team that you then need to try and usurp. Now, whether George Russell liked it or not, during the 3 years that he was at Mercedes-Benz with Lewis Hamilton, he was never ever going to be the lead driver. You know, ultimately Hamilton's won 7 world championships. He's got bags and bags of experiences, and yes, he has been very, very poor in the ground effect era, but there have been some times where you can see that Hamilton still got it. He just never had the right car with Mercedes, and Mercedes have just never been on top of the ground effect rules, whether you like it or whether you can accept it or not. That's just where they are. For me right now, Mercedes are pretty much where Ferrari were in 2023, because obviously Ferrari were very good at getting their tyres up to temperature, but then just being pretty poor in the races, and they had very low drag. Whereas Mercedes last year had very good car when there was little drag, like Belgium, Silverstone, Vegas, not so much in Monza. And also when the conditions were cold, Vegas, they were absolutely dominant. So you can see that Mercedes are still a good step behind the rest. They could obviously change that in the winter now. We're obviously seeing a lot of different teams now. We saw McLaren and Williams have already launched their cars at the time of me recording this video. So George Russell's got a lot of play on his shoulders. But the one thing that George Russell has been able to do, which is definitely going to help him, is he's had some time with the team. You know, normally, like Charles Leclerc, he only had 2 seasons, basically, alongside Vettel before Vettel decided to jump ship. And realistically, Vettel sort of fell down the pecking order at Ferrari pretty much when Charles Leclerc entered the team. Whereas with Mercedes and George Russell, it was almost like, well, Lewis Hamilton is still here. Hamilton's sort of like the headline driver. You're a quick driver, but you have the opportunity to learn. And whilst there's going to be pressure on George Russell's shoulders, there wasn't necessarily a massive amount of pressure all the time. You know, there was a good opportunity for him to just build himself, bed himself in, put in some performances. In 2022, he did very, very well. 2023, he had a very poor season, in my opinion. Hamilton had an exceptional season in 2023, given the circumstances. And then 2024, Russell then had a very good season, and Hamilton didn't have a great season in terms of the standards. And obviously, overall, from the 2 drivers throughout the course of the 3 years, obviously Russell beat Hamilton in 2 of the 3. Hamilton scored more points than Russell by like 6 or by like 4 or 5 points, something like that. They were basically even. But now there's no more sort of spotlights on Hamilton, because last year was basically an opportunity for George Russell to just get on with the season and have nothing to talk about. With the talk at Mercedes last year, it was all about Lewis Hamilton and his move to Ferrari. And if he had a good race and a good period, like when Mercedes was doing well in the sort of middle of the season period, when Ferrari were dropping off, it was sort of is Lewis Hamilton making the wrong decision? Is he now should have not gone to Ferrari? Are Mercedes on the rise again? And then all of a sudden, Mercedes dropped back down again. And then every time it was a rough time for Hamilton because he was just having difficult, basically flippy-floppy weekends, whereas qualifying was useless and his races were great. It just took the talk away from Russell, because no disrespect to Russell here, but it was more so no one really cared about what George Russell was doing. Everyone just wanted to talk about Lewis and what he was doing and how he was trying to stay focused with Mercedes, and then his comments about things. And George would say some similar things like the rear end doesn't work, or there's a lot of understeer, or, you know, we just don't have confidence through the corners at this different speeds or whatever. But because Lewis kept saying it, the talk was on him because it's obviously a partnership that's ending, and as each race goes by, you know, there's one less, and you think, you know, this is the last of Hamilton here and the last of Hamilton there. So George has been able to keep himself under the radar. But unfortunately for him now, and it's not really an unfortunate thing, but that's how it goes, there is no under the radar anymore. The face of Mercedes-Benz is George Russell. And the question is, can he now do what Lewis Hamilton has done for that team? Can he be the one to win a Drivers' Championship? Has he got what it takes to do it? The honest answer for me is yes, he can, but I don't think he's had enough experience. Now, what I mean by that, and I don't mean it in terms of he's not had enough experience behind the wheel. He's into his 7th season of Formula 1. I know, ultimately, if anybody's done that many seasons in Formula 1, they've got way more than enough experience in there. But if George Russell is going to lead that team to a championship, Mercedes need to hit the ground running in 2025 to give him the experience. We saw it last year with McLaren. They'd not won a Constructors' Championship since 1998. I was born in 1998, and basically my entire life I have never seen McLaren win a Constructors' Championship. Until now, obviously. But for them, you saw last year, even with the Norris, I say the Norris-Verstappen championship battle, but it was never really a championship battle, let's be real. But McLaren made a load of mistakes here. They obviously made issues with the strategy. They made issues with driver swaps, you know, with Piastri and Lando Norris. Norris made loads of mistakes himself. In Canada, they should have won. In Imola, they probably should have won if they did a better qualifying and had a better race pace at some points. In Spain, they missed out. In Silverstone, they missed out. You know, there's so many races that I can remember where McLaren should have won and they didn't win, whether it was driver or whether it was the team. Now, with Mercedes-Benz, as a team, they've still got enough pedigree to show that they can win championships. You know, it's only 2021, albeit 4 years ago now, that Mercedes last won and was in a proper title fight. But Mercedes still has enough people there to remember what a title fight is about. And for George Russell, my issue is he's had races where he's been absolutely outstanding. Like, let's cut to the positives of George Russell. He's an excellent qualifier. He always has been, even before the regulation change into the ground effect era. I remember some of the qualifying sessions that he did in 2021. The one that's instantly sticking in my head right now is Silverstone 2021, the very first sprint qualifying session that we ever had, I think. And I remember that Friday evening when he got himself into Q3, he could only do one run and he went around and he did a sub 1 minute 30. It was like a 29.8 or something like that. And then he went to like P8 and the crowd were loving it because it was a cracking lap time in a Williams car that just didn't deserve to be there. But he could do that. And obviously Spa 2021, all right? The race never happened, but in qualifying, he got onto the front row of the grid. That is the talent that George Russell has. And he's carried that into the ground effect era. He's been able, compared to Hamilton, to do a much better job of getting the tyres up to temperature and in a better working window, should I probably correct myself on that one, to get a good lap in. So for him to lead the Mercedes team, if they can give him a car that he's happy with, that is quick and he's confident with, I've got no doubt that in qualifying, George Russell's got everything of what it takes to be the best on the grid in terms of qualifying. It's a bold statement to say that, considering Verstappen's obviously there, Norris is great at qualifying, Leclerc is an excellent qualifier. I know Hamilton's been poor in the ground effect era for qualifying, but he is the guy with the most pole positions in Formula 1, so he's obviously a brilliant qualifier as well. But that is something that definitely is a strength of George Russell. Where I think that George Russell is definitely lacking is race pace. I feel like sometimes George has such great qualifyings, but he just can't do it all the time in the races. Like, I know they were on different strategies, but Abu Dhabi last year, the final race of the season, George started quite far up the grid. Hamilton got knocked out in Q1 because his car had a bollard stuck underneath it after Kevin Magnussen went off track to not impede him and then impeded him by smacking the bollard at him. And obviously, by the end of it, Hamilton then comes through the field and then overtakes George Russell on the last lap. I remember Imola, I think it was. There's been multiple positions where the gap's been like 20 seconds between the two of them. Then come the end of the race, it's flipped and it's either Hamilton just in front of Russell or Russell's only just beaten him. And I feel like that's where George has got his problem. Now, I'm not saying that that is always the problem. George Russell's definitely a good driver when it comes to driving in, you know, race trim. And I go back to the Las Vegas Grand Prix. That's sort of my big connection as to can George Russell do it? 100% he can, because the Vegas Grand Prix was a pure showcase of excellence from George Russell, from getting pole position in that race to starting the race decently, from defending hard against the Ferraris without wearing out his tyres. Okay, the Mercedes is better at keeping them into the right window in cold conditions for that W15, but still, he got them in the right condition and the right window there. He then managed to build out a massive gap, and then as Hamilton was closing that gap down, George had no panic or whatever. It was just, yeah, all right then, that's fine, no worries, you close that gap down. And then as soon as Hamilton basically hit the cliff of, well, bollocks, my tyres are gone, George is just, I'm off and away. The Belgian Grand Prix, okay, he was disqualified for having his car underneath the legal weight limit, but that doesn't take from what George Russell was able to achieve by going, hang on a minute, think of the one-stop strategy, let's try that one. And then they try it, and it works. And then the Brazilian Grand Prix, again, the race didn't work out for them, they didn't get a podium from it, but Russell started the race on the front row, goes in front of Lando Norris, manages it beautifully, and then Mercedes made an error under the red flag, so did McLaren. That's fine, it happens. So there's been a lot of flashes to show that George Russell can do it. And this is the opportunity now for Russell to have the freedom. Obviously, Lewis Hamilton has been begging for different changes to happen with the Mercedes car throughout the past couple of years. Obviously, for the 2022 season, Hamilton was one of those advocates that did not want the side pods, the zero pod concept going into the 2023 season. Mercedes decided to go against Hamilton's wishes, and they went and got a zero pod concept again in 2023. Did it work? No. In 2024 then, Hamilton said, we don't need the zero pod concept. They obviously accepted that was the case. The cockpit was too far forward, so there was an imbalance between feeling the rear of the car. So then Hamilton requested this, they then move it backwards, and the drivers feel more comfortable. It's very clear that Lewis Hamilton has been the man that's been speaking most about things that have been wrong with the Mercedes car. Where I feel like George Russell, as a leader of a championship winning team, needs to learn, and I feel like it's going to be a worry, is more so with his knowledge of making the car better and suiting him. Now, obviously, when it came to doing all the experiments that we saw, the classic experiments in practice, it was mostly Hamilton that was doing that. But now George Russell needs to implement all of his feedback into this and go, no, we need, for example, the cockpit to be moved this far backwards to get more stability on the rear. I need a bit more of a front end car compared to Hamilton that maybe liked a bit more of an unstable rear end. You know, stuff like that. You know, that's where I fear for George Russell, is does he have that type of technical feedback to help Mercedes build a car that suits him, but also makes it go further? If I'm being honest, I've got no doubts that George Russell, in terms of his qualifying pace and his race pace to an extent, is more than enough to win a world championship. The pressure is going to be there for George Russell. That's something that he needs to manage. You know, when he starts winning these races, if Mercedes are in a championship winning position, obviously we don't know what's going to happen next year, and this year technically, and I can't wait. I'm so looking forward to the season. It's going to be amazing, I can just tell. But George Russell, I fear, his lack of experience at being at the front of the field all the time is going to be an issue, because obviously Verstappen, if he's in a championship fight, he knows exactly what to do. Give him a car, bang, and he's on with it. Lewis Hamilton, give him a car, bang, he's on with it. Even Fernando Alonso, you know, look at 2023 in the Aston Martin when that car was actually decent the first 9-10 races of the season. Give Fernando Alonso a car, bang, he's on with it. And he's getting podiums, and he's nearly got pole in Monaco, for example. You know, he knows how to win. George Russell, when he does have a quick car, he can win. You know, he's proven that. You know, in Austria, he had a quick car-ish, and he was there to win when Max and Norris crashed. In Vegas, he had a quick car, won. Belgium, he had a quick car in the race and did something different to win. That's great. But the thing with Mercedes is because the car was so inconsistent, when the car was finally quick on a race weekend, I'm going to use Vegas again here, it was like a little spring in their step, and it was a little bit of an extra motivational piece. But now, if you put George Russell in a position where, right, you got to win this race to close the championship down because you're in a fight here, does he have the mental capacity for that? Right now, I don't think so. This is where I'm worried for Russell. I don't think he's got the mental capacity to go in a full-on championship fight with the likes of, example, Max Verstappen or Charles Leclerc. I just don't see that yet. I see enough speed and enough talent in the man to win multiple races. I don't see enough to take him over to the line to win a championship. He just looks a bit, he's just got too much of a I'm a nice guy attitude. Whereas when the helmet's down, you know, he's a great driver and he knows how to defend, you know, and he knows how to race. But it's the same thing with Norris. I just look at the two of them off track and you're just like, you're too nice to win, if that makes sense. You've got to be an ass. You've got to be a dick. You've got to put your elbows out. You've got to fight. Can you do that? I don't know. And I think it's an interesting era, and I'm looking forward to it. And of course, the pressure's still on George Russell because he is the de facto team leader. So if he doesn't perform well, and if Kimi Antonelli comes in, who's not expecting to outperform Russell, and does, then Russell's career is going to rapidly deteriorate before his own eyes. So he needs to establish himself as that team leader, make sure that he beats Antonelli consistently, because Antonelli's got no pressure on him. All right, if he does, you know, if he does like a Sergio Perez and he does loads of crashes and stuff like that, Mercedes may take a different view on it. But if Antonelli comes in and puts lots of pressure on Russell and starts maybe outperforming him, then it's going to put pressure on Mercedes to go, are you the right person? So there's a lot to talk about with George Russell, and if he can do it, I think he can. There's just a couple of things he's got to work on, and that is, for me, his race pace. If the Mercedes car is competitive, and that's a big if, can he keep the mental strength to go into a championship fight? Right now, no. He needs more times where the Mercedes is fastest to get the experience there. And crucially, he's got to keep his new protege, Kimi Antonelli, behind him, because if Kimi goes up ahead of him, then things will deteriorate for George Russell. But that's kind of my thoughts on it. I think he can do it, but he's got some work to do. That is going to be my sort of ramble for 20 minutes about George Russell and the F1 debate here. If you guys have enjoyed the video though, feel free to drop it a like. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Do you think George Russell can give Mercedes-Benz the success that they've now been missing for the past 4 years? Or will Mercedes have to use this era of their team and their sort of history as a stopgap until they can get another big champion in, maybe for 2026? Maybe they go out for Verstappen again. Who knows? Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. I think Russell can do it. It's just a case of he needs the experience, and the only way he's going to get that is more so with Mercedes giving him the car consistently to do it, rather than him doing it the other way around. But let me know what you think, and if you've got any other topics you want me to talk about leading up into the 2025 season, drop them in the comment section down below, and I will go ahead and do a debate on them. But for now, guys, I'm out of here. Take care all. Peace.